Well, she finally had enough. Now she's walking out my door. Another hard lesson learned. So I'm not drinking anymore. Oh, no. But I ain't drinking any less.
My name is Tim Brown. It's Timbrown, and I play for a band called Redneck the Band. We were formed in Albuquerque. At that time, I would say I was the lead singer. I think I was the only one who actually did sing lead. And then I played acoustic guitar. And then my twin brother, his name is David Brown, he played bass guitar, and he was the backup vocalist for me. And then Jim Brown was my younger brother. He played the drums. And then Shane Brown was my cousin, and he played the guitar. We were influenced mostly by Kiss at that time. There were four guys in Kiss. We wanted to be Kiss. We didn't really want to be like Kiss. We actually wanted to be Kiss. When we got to where we could actually learn to play instruments, I guess I was a junior in high school, and our grandparents actually bought us our first musical instruments. So that's what we did. We sat down and taught ourselves how to play. At the time we thought, well, gosh, this rock music's kind of hard to play. It's kind of hard to reproduce the sounds that they were doing for kids that honestly had no clue where to start. We thought country music sounded easier to play, to be honest, when we first started playing country music. But then we kind of became cowboys in high school. We began playing mostly in our garage, of course, like I think every garage band starts. We would go to school during the day, of course. I don't remember, 7 to 3, I don't know what school was. And then Dave and I would work. We would go to work from right after school till maybe 9 or 10 o'clock at night. And then the band would start practicing at that point. And every night was more like a concert than a practice because we had friends over every single time we practiced. So ultimately it turned from being a practice into more of a show, which eventually turned into a party, and then the show was over. We'd be done by 1 or 2 o'clock and then go back to school at 7 o'clock the next morning. Graduated high school in 1985, and we just wanted to hit the road. We didn't know what that meant at the time. That sounded cool, we wanted to be on the road. But we couldn't get on the road till we were 21 because we couldn't play in clubs. Now, we were playing in clubs by the time we were 19 here in Albuquerque, but our parents were here in Albuquerque and were able to get us in the clubs at that level. When we turned 21, we hired a booking agency out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, to book us in regional honky-tonks. The reason we were going was, we were chasing the dream of playing music for a living. That was what we wanted to do. That was the end game for us, was we wanted to play music every night for our living. And back in the 80s, you could play music for a living without being a superstar. They had, you could play 5 to 6 nights a week in these huge honky-tonk bars that were pretty popular, and you could make a living. And so we started Flagstaff, Arizona in February of 1989. It was our first road show. And we felt like, we finally made it. We're on the road. We spent the next 3 to 4 years just touring the mostly the Good Music Agency out of Minneapolis. It was their honky-tonk rotation, if you will. And we played mostly, we do Colorado, Wyoming, South Dakota, North Dakota, up into Canada, over into Oklahoma, and then New Mexico and Arizona. And we spent the next 4 years playing the smaller of the venues and just cutting our teeth on touring nonstop. Being on the road was awesome. Especially for young guys with no responsibilities. So before kids and marriages and those kinds of things, there's no better way for a young man to spend his time. We didn't have any responsibility. We were playing music all day. I mean, all night, and we're drinking for free. I wasn't much of a drinker myself, but the rest of the band could kick them back, and we didn't ever pay for a drink from the time we were 21 till the time we quit playing music, and so our days were spent playing golf and watching movies, and our nights were spent playing music. I mean, what more do you want? Okay, so before there were kids and there was just women, and believe me, playing in the band, you don't have to be good looking. There's women are around. They're constantly around, and it's a constant distraction. It's not. I don't mean in the live sense where we're on stage being a distraction. That's fine, but they were a distraction off stage. They became. It was very difficult, okay, because when someone would start dating someone, well, they liked the guy in the band, but then when they dated for a while, then they didn't want that person necessarily being on stage all the time or flirting with other girls all the time, which is kind of what live music is about. I mean, to sell records, you flirt. You get up there and you flirt. And that wasn't always great for home life. It's a lot of fights, a lot of tension when women were involved. When we started having more serious relationships as we got older, and then those developed into marriage relationships, then it was not wanting to be away from home because we were just gone all the time. And at that level, you're not a superstar. You hear superstars, well, they play 210 dates a year. Wow, that is a lot of dates, but they go home anytime they want to, or they can have their families with them because they make enough money to do that. At our level, there was no bringing families with us, and there was no going home every couple of weeks. We'd be gone for months at a time, and that was hard. It wasn't much of a living. We didn't make very much money, but we did get a lot tighter as a group. When we started, when we were first coming out of high school, you couldn't have told us we weren't Alabama. We thought we were that good. We thought we were as good as anybody. And then it took a couple of years on the road to really be humiliated by bands that were good. And we realized that we needed a lot of work. And we did put the work in, though. We did, we would play every night from 9 o'clock till 2. You've heard it in a lot of country songs. Once you get caught up in honky-tonkin', you're playing other people's songs because that's what you have to do to make a living, That's what the club owners want. That's what keeps the dance floors packed. So you play other people's stuff. But the whole time we're trying to write our own music as well. Probably 2 years into the road, we cut our first album. That was called Jukebox Moanin'. And we had written all 10 songs on that album. 5 years into being on the road. So I'd say somewhere in the mid-90s, actually in the early 90s, I had a son. And that probably should have changed my life more than it did, but it changed it. It changed it radically in the fact that I spent most of my off time trying to get back home. But then, in 1997, after being on the road for 8 years, we met some gentlemen that run Pacific Records. So, Tony Tuthill and Casey Austin, the two men that were running Pacific Records, had asked us to join their team, and we cut a record with them. And that record was the first time we actually cut music in Nashville. We picked Redneck out of a hat. That's a true story. We all picked a couple of names that we liked, and we wanted one-word names, and the reason for that is because of Kiss. Kiss was a one-word name. We wanted to have a one-word name that was cool. Aerosmith. So we threw a bunch of names in a hat, and Redneck came out. Well, we were young enough at that time, and from Albuquerque, that the racial tensions about that word didn't exist. We didn't even understand that there were racial tensions over the word redneck. We thought it was a country boy, a guy with a red neck. I'm not even sure we understood that much about it, but we knew there were negative connotations by the time we got on the road. Then we started living it. We played a couple clubs in the Deep South, and with that name, we did encounter resistance. And so when we cut our Nashville record, radio stations wouldn't play the record with the name Redneck on it. So we all got together and just voted and decided to change it to Rambler. I would say that most people don't realize that when you're cutting records in country music and in Nashville, really you're only cutting vocals. They hire musicians to do everything else. They call it this band, but the record, if you look at it, has 14 musicians that aren't in the band that actually cut the record. And that was true with most bands. There's a few exceptions, but that was our first Nashville record, and we did not get to cut the music on it. We only got to cut the vocals, and we did write 3 of the 7 songs, but we were told we couldn't have only our own songs on it also. That's when we decided maybe Nashville wasn't the way for us to go. We didn't like the fact that we didn't have control of our own music. We didn't like the fact that we couldn't choose the songs we were going to put on our own record, or play the music that we put on a record. We were telling people this is our music, but it wasn't us playing it. That didn't feel great. So we cut ties with them in 2000, and we cut our first, what I think was our best record we've ever cut. We cut that in Oklahoma City with Dave Copenhaver, and the album was called Starting Over, and it was significant in the fact that I wrote the entire album from start to finish specifically as an album, but to this day, our best album by far, and it did get a lot of radio airplay on an independent level. At that time, we decided we weren't really obsessed with stardom anyway. We were kind of focused on the music part of it, and I'm proud of that record. It's the best writing I've ever done. We toured on that record, and we're able to do a lot more fun things. We got to tour for Great American Country, which was a country music network, which came along after country music television, and we got to do the road shows with them, and that took us to places we'd have never gone. Upstate New York, some East Coast things that we'd have never got to see. We've opened up for almost anybody, all the way from Garth Brooks, Tim McGraw, Kenny Chesney, on down to Alabama, on down the line. We've opened up for almost every country act that was probably at that time. And so with that said, there's several of them that we thought, how did these guys ever get on the radio? And then there's hundreds of bands like we were that were doing the regional stuff, where we were thinking, how are these guys not superstars? They're so good. What we didn't know was there was another guy on that show that was going to be in between acts. He was going to actually open he was going to open Garth's show, and we were going to open his show, and that was Chris Ledoux. And so we met him during the setup and sound check for the first show with Garth Brooks, and turned out to be one of my better friendships of another musician on the road, and he was the most sincere and honest and kind person I probably ever met in my life, and just a real person, and a real cowboy, which I wasn't always fond of real cowboys, but he was, and he was just a great person, and turned out to be a great musician, got some fame himself after touring with Garth for a little while, and then he and his band came in and cut some tracks on our second record, which was just a huge lifelong dream for me to have Chris Ledoux and the Western Underground cut tracks on our record. That was an amazing time for me. His band and my band, they were kind of crazy people anyway. So we were on the 7th floor of a building that had open windows and had a little walkway about this wide that went around the entire building. And so one night we decided after the show that we were just going to get crazy. By the end of the night, Chris and I were both, hammered, and so we started doing some crazy tricks and stuff, I remember turning the camera upside down, and we would jump up and touch the roof, and so when you played it back, it looked like we were doing handstands and jumping off the floor. It was a good night. It was a lot of fun. So once that 3-year period was kind of coming to an end, I think that's when, as we were getting to our 40s, that we were thinking, hey, maybe music isn't going to be our end-all, be-all. Maybe there's other things for us out there. But when we came back to Albuquerque, I think that's when it changed. That's when we decided this is going to be more of a hobby, and we got real jobs. Kept the band together, and it was probably more fun at that time because it wasn't a job anymore. But that was kind of the beginning of the end of Redneck. My brothers moved away. I was the last original member, and as of December 2018, I played my last show. And now I retired Redneck.
What advice would you give to aspiring musicians?
I think you need to spend some time on the road. And by the road, I don't mean there's no more 5 and 6 nights a week, but you need to be out there. You can play your Thursday, Friday, Saturday jobs all over the state, and actually sometimes nationally. Even Texas is a better place, but you need to have some live performance going on all the time to keep your chops, as they call them, moving. But at some point, you just have to make the move, and you're going to have to, in my opinion, you've got to be present to win. You're going to have to go to Nashville. You're going to have to beat down doors like everybody else does. You know, I guess I would say that I think that I probably wouldn't change a thing. You know, we had chances at maybe stardom. We had chances definitely at success. But the roads that we decided to take at the time, I think were probably the right roads for us, and it brought me, you know, who I am today, and my family is first and most important, of course. Also, being that my first love is Christianity, and that lifestyle is not conducive to living as a Christian, and so I'm where I'm supposed to be now, but I don't think I would have changed anything there.
I'll be alright, I'll be okay. I'll be okay. There's lots of things for me to do. I won't think about yesterday. I won't just sit around here feeling blue. My loneliness I will disguise. You never know, you took me by surprise. No, 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 no. Starting over. Starting over, being strong and holding on, it's the only way I know. Starting over, and finding out that the hardest part is simply letting go. Just letting go. Just